trade with CARICOM and Canada is not significant in terms of percentage. You see that virtually less than, that would be just about 0.1% of the trade in terms of exports from Canada to CARICOM. We're not talking about large numbers. In fact, in the grand scheme of things, as a percentage of CARICOM's trade, we are talking in the order of 3 to 6 and 7% for a lot of countries. The point I want to make here basically is twofold. The trade is not large, and secondly, there's been a movement away from relying on the CARICOM preferences to our exporters opting to trade under the GSP. And this is not a bad thing, because it in fact displays a propensity, a certain ability of our firms to compete with other firms globally that also trade under GSP, or the Generalized System of Preferences, which is also available to them. So there is no preferential trade taking place under the GSP between our countries and other developing countries, and that's a good sign. And many have said as a result of that, that CARICOM is becoming perhaps less used. I'm not sure that is the case, but I'm making the point that increasingly the trade is taking place outside of that.
The current state of trade between CARICOM and Canada begs the question, is there real justification for entering into a trade agreement with Canada?
If you think about an agreement with Canada only in terms of what you have and what you stand to lose, if you think it's only in terms of a traditional agricultural system, you cannot find a very justifiable basis for doing this agreement. I want to be very frank in saying so, notwithstanding everything I've said before. But if you think about this in the context of a dynamic, growing and emerging regional and global market for agriculture, including agri-food products, then there's an overwhelming logic about why this agreement could make sense. And I'm being very cautious. Canada has a plethora of agreements with other people, including the US and Mexico. Belize shares a border with Mexico. They have agreements with countries that are in the Andean region. How can we use this agreement, their technology, our relationship in a development cooperation context to benefit in penetrating not just Canadian markets, but those third country markets? How then can I use an agreement to benefit from what's happening in Canada with this dynamic market growth in consumer-oriented products? And how then can I benefit from learning from Canada through an agreement on what they have been able to do with innovation, research, productivity growth? The agreement with Costa Rica is a good template for us to look at in terms of what can happen with CARICOM. From that template, Canada's limited liberalization to 9 years. I believe we can get more from Canada without doing anything else. Even if we got 15 or 20 years, our agricultural development would not be substantially better off in the long run.
Given our level of development, given the disparity between the two sides, we would want to ensure that our most sensitive products are protected on our domestic markets, so that the tariffs on those sensitive products, which are generally agricultural products, should remain. Or for those which would be reduced, we would want to see an extended period of time before the tariffs are reduced. And coupled with that, we are seeking a separate chapter on agriculture which would address the development side of agriculture, which would address issues such as the technical and financial support necessary for the transformation of the sector.
It is not the time frames alone, it is not the exclusions. If we do nothing in CARICOM, we could not see the benefits that we intend to see from the agreement. And this is how we need to sell this agreement to our politicians, to our heads of government, and to our stakeholders.
Even when an agreement such as the EPA may provide generous market access conditions, unless the critical supply side issues are addressed, market access means nothing. So that for us to talk glowingly about creating market access and signing arrangements which give certainty is one thing. For us to do, and when I think of us, I am speaking of all of us, and in particular our governments, for us to do what is necessary in order to enable our stakeholders to truly take advantage of the opportunities created is another story. And it is so for the EPA, it will be so for the Canada-CARICOM arrangement. And I think that is important, particularly in the context where the figures indicate that the volume of trade, whether in goods or in services, with Canada is not such that anyone would be so, excited about the prospects for increased trade with Canada. I am making the point that the agreement may provide certainty. The agreement may assure us of a particular level of preference, but there is so much more which our governments, which our agencies, which our business persons must do. As one of the persons engaged in the negotiations is the emphasis on strategy. How do you strategize in order to obtain to make the most of the benefits, make the most of the opportunities presented by an arrangement with Canada, so that it is not merely the signing of an agreement, but rather the carving, the negotiation of an arrangement which would yield maximum benefits for the persons for whom one is negotiating.
We must now intellectually think about how we can use the agreement to expand our trade and development space. And this is why I was very pleased in October 2007 when the CARICOM and the Canadian chief negotiators agreed that we would in fact incorporate development cooperation in the agreement. And I want to say that to my mind is a platform that we need to focus on as much as we focus on the reduction in the duties and the time frames for liberalization.